I'd always thought my life with Emily was a steady, unshakable thing, built on years of trust, quiet mornings with coffee steaming between us, and evenings where we'd collapse onto the couch, her feet tucked under my legs while we watched some forgettable show. She was my constant, my anchor through the chaos of running a small construction business in a town that never seemed to grow. We'd been married 12 years, and though the spark had dulled into a comfortable glow, I never doubted her. Not once. She was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays, who left sticky notes on the fridge with little hearts scribbled in the corners, who laughed at my terrible attempts at cooking. I thought I knew her down to the marrow of her bones. It started with the smallest of shifts, so subtle I didn't even clock it at first. She'd been working late at the bookstore she managed, inventory, she said, or new shipments that needed sorting. I didn't mind. I liked that she had her own world, her own rhythm. But then the late nights stretched longer, and she'd come home with this faint scent clinging to her. Something woody, sharp, not her usual lavender. I asked once casually over dinner, "New perfume?" I'd said, twirling spaghetti onto my fork. She'd smiled, quick and tight, and said, "Oh, just something I tried at the store." I let it go. Why wouldn't I? She was Emily, my Emily. But the scent lingered, night after night, and soon it wasn't just that. Her phone started buzzing more. Little pings she'd silence with a glance, her thumb swiping the screen dark before I could catch a glimpse. She'd laugh it off. "Just Sarah. You know how she gets." And I'd nod, because Sarah was her best friend, the chatterbox who'd call about anything from a broken nail to a new recipe. I didn't push. I trusted her. That's what you do when you've built a life with someone. You trust them. Weeks turned into months, and the cracks widened. She'd pull away when I reached for her in the morning, her body stiffening like I'd startled her. She'd mutter something about being tired, roll out of bed, and disappear into the shower before I could say anything. I told myself it was stress, retail's brutal, especially around the holidays. I'd see her at the kitchen table, hunched over her laptop, glasses slipping down her nose, and I'd think, she's just worn out. I'd bring her tea, kiss the top of her head, and leave her to it. But the tea would sit there, untouched, and her eyes wouldn't meet mine. One night, I came home early from a job site. Rain had shut us down, and found her car gone. The bookstore closed at 6, and it was pushing 9. I called her, got voicemail, texted, got nothing. She rolled in at 11, hair damp, that woody scent stronger than ever. "Where've you been?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She froze, then smiled, too bright, too fast. "Oh, Sarah needed help with something. Lost track of time." I nodded, but my gut twisted. Sarah lived across town, and Emily's hair smelled like rain and something else. Something that wasn't ours. I didn't sleep that night. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. I don't snoop, don't pry. I've always figured people deserve their space, especially the ones you love. But that night, with Emily's damp hair and her flimsy excuse ringing in my ears, something shifted. It wasn't anger, not yet, just a gnawing itch I couldn't scratch. The next morning, she was up before me, humming in the kitchen like nothing had happened. I watched her butter toast, her movements quick and precise, and I wondered how she could look so normal when I felt like I was sinking into quicksand. I started paying attention after that. Little things I'd ignored piled up like bricks. She'd take her phone into the bathroom when she showered, the door locked tight. She'd leave for work earlier, come back later, always with some breezy explanation. Staff meetings, a customer who wouldn't leave, a delivery mix-up. I'd nod, smile, play the part of the understanding husband, but my mind was spinning. I'd catch her staring out the window sometimes, her face blank, like she was somewhere else entirely. One afternoon, I stopped by the bookstore unannounced. I'd finished a job nearby and thought I'd surprise her, maybe take her to lunch. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped in, and there she was behind the counter, laughing with some guy I didn't know. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a grin that made my stomach lurch. She didn't see me at first, too caught up in whatever he was saying, her hand brushing his arm as she handed him a book. I stood there, frozen, until her eyes flicked up and met mine. The laugh died on her lips. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile. "Thought I'd drop by." She blinked, then recovered, introducing him as Mark, just a regular. Mark gave me a nod, friendly enough, but there was something in his eyes, something knowing. He left a minute later, and Emily busied herself with the register, chattering about how busy the day had been. I didn't buy it. That woody scent was in the air again, faint but unmistakable. I didn't say anything, just kissed her cheek and left. That night I couldn't sleep again. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, her breathing soft and steady beside me. I kept seeing her hand on his arm, the way her face had lit up. I told myself I was overreacting. People flirt, it's harmless. But then I remembered the late nights, the locked bathroom door, the phone she guarded like a treasure chest. I needed to know. So when she left for work the next day, I did something I'd never done before. I went through her things. Emily's side of the bedroom was a mess of organized chaos. Books stacked on the nightstand, scarves draped over the chair, a half-empty mug of tea gone cold. I started with her dresser, feeling like a thief in my own house. Nothing jumped out at first, just socks, sweaters, the usual. But then, in the bottom drawer, under a pile of old t-shirts, I found a small velvet box. My heart thudded as I opened it. Inside was a silver bracelet, delicate and expensive. Nothing like the chunky jewelry she usually wore. There was no note, no receipt, but I knew I hadn't given it to her. I moved to her laptop next. She'd left it on the kitchen table, screen dark. I hesitated. Crossing this line felt final, like I couldn't unsee whatever I found. But I had to know. Her password was easy, our anniversary, same as always. The screen flared to life and I clicked into her email. Most of it was mundane work stuff, spam, a thread with Sarah about a movie night. Then I saw it. An email from M. No subject, sent 2 days ago. "Can't wait to see you again," it read. Same place, same time. My hands shook as I scrolled. There were more, dozens of them going back months. Short, vague, but damning. "Missed you last night. You looked incredible. Delete this after you read it." I sat there, staring at the screen, the words blurring into a haze. My chest felt tight, like someone had punched through my ribs and squeezed. I closed the laptop, my mind racing. M had to be Mark, the guy from the bookstore. Fit too well. I thought about confronting her, demanding answers, but I stopped myself. I needed more. I needed proof I could hold in my hands, something she couldn't talk her way out of. That afternoon, I drove to the bookstore again. I didn't go in, just parked across the street, watching. She came out at 6, right on schedule. But instead of heading home, she turned left, toward the edge of town. I followed, keeping my distance, my truck blending into the evening traffic. She pulled into a motel lot, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. My stomach dropped as she parked, got out, and walked straight to room 12. A minute later, a familiar figure stepped out to meet her, Mark. They didn't linger outside, just slipped into the room like it was routine. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I wanted to storm in, rip the door off its hinges, but I didn't. I waited. 2 hours later, they came out. She kissed him, quick, casual, like it was nothing, and drove off. I followed her home, watched her walk into our house, and pretended everything was fine when I walked in 10 minutes later. She smiled at me, asked about my day. I smiled back, said it was good. Inside, I was breaking. For days, I lived in a fog. I'd go through the motions, work, home, dinner with Emily, but it was like I was watching myself from outside my body. She'd chatter about her day, and I'd nod, my mind replaying that motel scene over and over. The kiss, the way she'd walked into that room like it was her second home. I didn't confront her, though. Not yet. Anger was there, simmering, but it was cold, focused. I wanted her to pay, not just her, but him too. I wanted them to feel what I felt, only worse. I started digging deeper. I borrowed a buddy's old camera, the kind with a decent zoom, and staked out the motel the next week. Same day, same time, they showed up again. I snapped pictures, her car pulling in, them meeting at the door, the way her hand lingered on his back. I got it all. Back home, I printed them on my ancient inkjet, the images grainy but clear enough. Her face stared back at me from the paper, smiling at him, and I felt that twist in my gut again. Next, I tracked down Mark. It wasn't hard, small-town people talk. His full name was Mark Delaney, a mechanic who worked at a garage a few miles out. I drove by once, saw him under a car, grease on his hands, laughing with a coworker. He looked so ordinary, so smug. I wondered how long it had been going on, how many nights I'd sat home while she was with him. I didn't stop to introduce myself. Not yet. The revenge took shape slowly, piece by piece. I didn't want it quick or sloppy. I wanted it to linger, to cut deep. First, I opened a burner email account and sent her one of the motel photos, no text, just the image. She came home that night pale, her hands trembling as she poured wine. "You okay?" I asked, playing dumb. She nodded, said she was just tired. I let it sit, let her stew. The next day, I sent another, this time to Mark's work email. I'd found it on the garage's site. I watched from a distance as he checked his phone at lunch, his face going slack. I wasn't done. I started leaving hints around the house. His bracelet on her nightstand, a scrap of paper with M written on it tucked into her purse. She'd find them, freeze, then brush it off when I asked. I could see the panic building in her eyes, the way she'd glance at me like she wasn't sure what I knew. I kept my face blank, my voice steady. Inside, I was screaming. By now, Emily was unraveling. She'd jump at every noise, check her phone obsessively, then shove it away like it burned her. I'd catch her staring at me across the table, searching my face for something. Guilt, maybe, or fear that I'd figured it out. I gave her nothing. I'd smile, ask about her day, pass the salt. She'd stumble through answers, her voice too high, her hands fidgeting. Mark was rattled too. I'd drive by the garage and see him pacing outside, phone pressed to his ear, his easy grin gone. I upped the ante. I hired a guy, a friend of a friend who didn't ask questions, to tail them. He got me recordings. Muffled conversations in the motel room, her voice soft and pleading, his sharp and impatient. "He knows something," she'd said once, her words crackling through the static. "I don't know how, but he does." Mark had laughed, said I was too dumb to figure it out. Hearing that lit a fire in me, turned the cold anger hot. I started planting more evidence. I left a motel receipt on the kitchen counter. Fake, but convincing. Dated from a night she'd said she was with Sarah. She found it, went white, and mumbled something about a mix-up. I nodded, said, "Weird, huh?" and watched her squirm. I mailed Mark a photo of them together and signed to his apartment. My friend saw him rip it up, cursing, looking over his shoulder like he expected me to jump out of the shadows. The real blow came next. I hacked into her bookstore security footage. Nothing fancy, just a cheap system with a default password she'd never changed. I pulled hours of clips. Mark showing up during her shifts, their casual chats stretching too long, her slipping out the back with him when she thought no one was watching. I saved it all, built a timeline. 12 years with her, and she'd thrown it away for this grease-stained nobody. I wasn't ready to end it yet. I wanted them to feel trapped, to choke on their own lies. So I waited, let the pressure build. Emily started losing weight, her cheeks hollowing out. Mark quit the garage, word was he'd snapped at a customer, stormed off. I'd smile at her over breakfast, kiss her forehead, and watch her flinch. The revenge was coming, and it was going to be merciless. The house felt like a pressure cooker now, every moment thick with unspoken tension. Emily's eyes darted around like a cornered animal's, and I could tell she was fraying at the edges. She'd stopped humming in the mornings, stopped leaving those little sticky notes with hearts. Instead, she'd hover near me, watching, waiting for me to drop the mask I'd so carefully worn. I didn't. I'd pour her coffee, ask about her plans, keep my voice light, like nothing had changed. But everything had. The photos, the recordings, the bracelet. They were all pieces of a puzzle she couldn't solve, and it was eating her alive. I kept the screws turning. One night, while she was in the shower, door locked, phone in hand, I slipped into her car and planted a single earring. It wasn't hers. I'd bought it cheap at a thrift store, a gaudy thing with a fake pearl. I tucked it under the passenger seat, just visible enough to catch the light. She found it 2 days later. I heard her gasp from the driveway, saw her scramble to hide it in her purse when I stepped outside. "Everything okay?" I called, leaning against the porch rail. She nodded too fast, said something about dropping her keys. I smiled and went back inside, letting her stew in the mystery. Mark was cracking too. My friend tailed him to a bar one night, said he looked like a wreck, unshaven, nursing a beer, muttering to himself. I'd sent him another photo that week, this time slipped under his apartment door. Emily stepping out of the motel, his arm around her waist. No note, just the image. I wanted him paranoid, jumping at shadows, wondering who was watching. It worked. He started calling her more. I'd see her phone light up with his name, watch her silence it and shove it away. She'd glance at me, her lips twitching like she wanted to say something, but she never did. I decided to push harder. I invited Sarah over for dinner, Emily's alibi, her supposed confidant. Sarah showed up with a bottle of wine, all smiles, oblivious to the storm brewing. I kept the conversation light at first, asking about her life, her job. Then, over dessert, I dropped it. "So, Sarah, you and Em have been hanging out a lot lately, huh? Late nights and all." Sarah blinked, laughed, said, "Not really, work's been crazy." Emily's fork froze halfway to her mouth. I nodded, took a sip of wine, let the silence stretch. Sarah didn't notice, but Emily did. She knew I was onto her lie. That night, she cornered me in the kitchen, her voice low and shaky. "What was that about?" she asked, hands twisting together. I shrugged, said, "Just making conversation." She stared at me, searching, but I gave her nothing, just a blank smile. She backed off, but I could see the panic blooming. I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. I wanted her to drown in it first. The recordings from the motel were my ace. I'd listen to them late at night, headphones on, her voice cutting through the static like a knife. She'd told Mark she loved him once. Soft, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she meant it. He'd laughed, said, "You're stuck with me now." I'd replayed that part a dozen times, letting it fuel me. I burned copies onto a USB drive, tucked it away with the photos and the footage from the bookstore. It was a dossier now, a weapon I'd wield when the time was right. I started leaving bigger breadcrumbs. One morning, I accidentally left my laptop open on the kitchen table. A still from the bookstore footage paused on the screen. Her and Mark by the back door, too close, her hand on his chest. I watched from the hallway as she saw it, her breath catching, her fingers hovering over the keys like she didn't know whether to close it or pretend she hadn't noticed. She shut it down, fast, and when I walked in, she was scrubbing a dish that was already clean. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, didn't look at me. Mark got bolder or dumber. He showed up at the bookstore again mid-afternoon, when I knew she'd be alone. I was ready, parked across the street, camera in hand. He stayed 10 minutes, left with a smirk. I followed him to the motel, watched him check in alone. An hour later, her car pulled up. I didn't take pictures this time, I didn't need to. I knew the routine. Instead, I called the motel from a burner phone, asked for room 12, hung up when he answered. I wanted him rattled, wondering who was on the other end. That night, Emily came home late again, her hair mussed, that woody scent clinging to her. I didn't ask where she'd been, just handed her a glass of water and said, "Long day." She mumbled something, avoided my eyes. I let it hang there, the weight of it pressing down on her. Later, I slipped the USB drive into her purse, buried under her wallet. She'd find it eventually, and when she did, she'd know the game was up. I started planning the endgame. It wasn't enough to expose them. I wanted them humiliated, broken, stripped of everything they cared about. I'd ruin her at work, him in this town. I'd make sure they couldn't look at each other without seeing me. The thought kept me going, kept the rage from swallowing me whole. The USB drive did its job. She found it 2 days later, I heard her drop her purse in the hall, the contents spilling across the floor. She scrambled to pick it up, but not before I saw her clutch the drive, her face draining of color. She didn't say anything, just shoved it back in and disappeared upstairs. That night, she barely ate, pushing food around her plate while I talked about a job site like nothing was wrong. She kept glancing at me, waiting for the hammer to fall. I didn't give it to her. Not yet. The next morning, I called the bookstore's owner, a gruff old guy named Ted who'd known me since I'd fixed his roof years back. I told him I had something he needed to see. Security footage from his own shop, showing Emily sneaking out with a customer during shifts. I didn't mention Mark, just said it was unprofessional. Ted grunted, said he'd look into it. I emailed him a clip, short but damning. By noon, Emily was home, slamming the door, her eyes red. Ted fired me, she snapped, pacing the kitchen. Said I was unreliable. What the hell's going on? I played dumb, furrowed my brow. That's crazy. Did he say why? She shook her head, muttered something about a mix-up, but I could see the gears turning. She knew it wasn't random. I left her to simmer, headed to the garage where Mark used to work. His old boss was there, a guy I'd met at a bar once. I showed him a photo, Mark and Emily at the motel, time-stamped. Heard he quit, I said casually. Good thing, huh? Guy like that's trouble. The boss nodded, said he'd spread the word. Mark wouldn't get another job in this town, not with that floating around. Emily started calling Mark. I'd see his name flash on her phone, hear her whisper into it when she thought I was asleep. I didn't care. Let them panic together. I sent Ted more footage, enough to make sure Emily's firing stuck. She'd loved that job, poured years into it. Now it was gone, and she had no idea I'd lit the match. That night, she broke. Do you know something? She asked, voice trembling, standing in the doorway of our bedroom. I looked up from my book, kept my face neutral. About what? She faltered, backed off. I smiled inside. She was so close to cracking, and I was just getting started. I wanted them exposed, not just to me but to everyone. So I took it public, carefully, quietly, so it couldn't trace back. I printed flyers, grainy stills from the motel and bookstore footage, no names, just enough to recognize her face, his. I paid a kid from the job site to scatter them around town. The diner, the gas station, the park where Emily used to walk. By morning, people were whispering. I saw it myself. 2 women at the grocery store, heads bent over a flyer, glancing at me with pity when I walked by. Emily noticed the shift fast. She came home from the store that afternoon, her arms full of bags, her face tight. People are staring at me, she said, dropping the groceries on the counter. Like I did something wrong. I shrugged, said, small towns. You know how they talk. She didn't buy it. Her hands shook as she unpacked, and I saw her sneak a look at her phone. Mark again, probably. I didn't care. The town was doing my work for me now. Mark's life was imploding too. Word from the garage spread. His old boss had shown the photo to a few regulars, and it snowballed. He'd been spotted arguing with his landlord, then loading a duffel bag into his truck. He was running or trying to. I made sure he couldn't. I called in a favor with a cop friend, tipped him off about Mark's truck. Bald tires, expired tags. Next day, it was impounded. He was stuck, broke, and alone. Emily stopped leaving the house. She'd sit by the window, staring out, her phone silent now. I'd catch her crying sometimes. Quiet sobs she'd stifle when I walked in. What's wrong? I'd ask, all concern. She'd shake her head, say it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything collapsing around her, and I was the architect. I sent one last email from the burner. A zip file to both of them, packed with every photo, every recording, every scrap I'd collected. Subject line, you're done. I watched her open it that night, her laptop glowing in the dark living room. She didn't move for an hour, just stared, tears streaming down her face. I slept soundly for the first time in months. The end came fast after that. Emily barely spoke now, a ghost in our house, drifting from room to room. She tried calling Mark. I saw the missed calls piling up, but he wasn't answering. I knew why. My cop friend told me he'd skipped town, left his truck behind, probably hitchhiking somewhere with nothing but the clothes on his back. I'd made sure he had nowhere to land. His reputation was ash, his bridges burned. I saved the worst for her. I filed for divorce, had the papers served at the house while I was at work. She called me hysterical, begging to talk. I didn't pick up. When I got home, she was on the couch, the papers crumpled in her lap, her eyes swollen. "Why?" she whispered. I looked at her, let the mask slip just enough. "You know why?" I said, voice flat. She flinched like I'd hit her, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. I didn't stop there. I packed her out. Everything she owned, boxed up and dumped on Sarah's porch. Sarah didn't ask questions, just took her in. I changed the locks, forwarded her mail to a P.O. box. The house was mine now, cleansed of her. I heard through the grapevine she tried to get her job back. But Ted wouldn't budge. The flyers had done their damage. Customers stopped going to the bookstore, and it was struggling. She was a pariah, untouchable. I saw her one last time weeks later at the gas station. She looked hollow, her hair limp, her shoulders slumped. She saw me, froze, then turned away. I didn't say a word, just filled my tank and drove off. The revenge was complete. She'd lost her job, her lover, her home, her life here. Mark was gone, a nobody drifting nowhere. And me? I was free. The weight of her betrayal lifted, replaced by a cold, hard satisfaction. They'd never forget me. I'd made sure of it. The days after Emily left were quiet, too quiet, maybe. The house felt cavernous without her. Every creak of the floorboards echoing in a way I hadn't noticed before. Her absence was everywhere. The empty hooks where her coats used to hang, the bare nightstand on her side of the bed, the kitchen counter free of her half-finished tea mugs. I'd wanted this, fought for it, but the victory tasted bitter at first. I'd spent so long plotting, watching, tearing her world apart, that when it was done, I wasn't sure what to do with myself. Work kept me steady. The guys at the job site didn't ask questions. They'd heard the rumors, seen the flyers, pieced it together. A few clapped me on the back, offered beers after shifts, their way of saying they got it. I'd nod, take the drinks, let the noise of the bar drown out the silence waiting at home. But even there, I'd catch whispers, people talking about Emily, about Mark, about the mess I'd made of them. It wasn't pity in their voices, though. It was awe, maybe even fear. I'd become a story, the husband who didn't just walk away but burned it all down. I started hearing updates through the grapevine. Emily was still with Sarah, sleeping on her couch, scraping by on odd jobs, cleaning houses, running errands for old ladies who didn't care about the gossip. She tried leaving town once, I heard, packed a bag and bought a bus ticket, but Sarah talked her out of it. Probably told her she could rebuild here, start over. I didn't care either way. She wasn't my problem anymore. The divorce was moving forward, slow but steady, and I'd made sure she wouldn't get a dime beyond what the law forced me to give. Mark was a ghost. Someone said they'd seen him a few towns over, bussing tables at a diner, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. His truck was still in the impound lot, rusting away. No one claimed it. I'd check in with my cop friend sometimes, just to see if he'd surfaced, but there was nothing worth hearing. He'd fallen off the map, and I liked it that way. Every mile he drifted was a reminder of what I'd taken from him. His smug grin, his easy life, all gone. I kept the evidence, though, the photos, the recordings, the USB drive. Not out of sentiment, but as a trophy. I'd pull it out sometimes, late at night, flip through the images or listen to her voice crackling through the static. It wasn't about reliving the pain. It was about remembering the power. She thought I was blind, weak. Mark had laughed at me. Now they were nothing, and I was still standing. Time passed, and the story didn't fade, it grew. People in town started treating me different, like I was some kind of legend. At the hardware store, the cashier would nod, say, "Heard you handled things right," like I'd won a prize. The diner waitress would slide me extra fries, a wink in her eye. I didn't ask for it, didn't want it, but it stuck. Emily and Mark became cautionary tales, the kind parents told their kids. Don't mess around, don't get caught, because someone like me might be waiting. I saw Sarah once, months later, at the grocery store. She was alone, pushing a cart half full, her face tired. She spotted me, hesitated, then walked over. "She's not okay," she said, voice low. "You didn't have to destroy her like that." I looked at her, kept my tone even. "She destroyed herself. I just turned on the light." Sarah's lips pressed thin, but she didn't argue. Just shook her head and walked away. I didn't feel bad. Sarah hadn't been there for the lies, the late nights, the motel room. She didn't get to judge me. Emily's name popped up less and less. The bookstore closed. Ted couldn't keep it afloat after the regulars drifted away, spooked by the flyers. I drove by one day, saw the "for lease" sign hanging crooked in the window. It felt final, like I'd erased her from the town itself. People said she'd stopped going out much, stayed holed up at Sarah's, a shadow of the woman I'd married. I wondered if she thought about me, if she replayed it all like I did. Probably. I started fixing up the house, new paint, new floors, ripping out anything that reminded me of her. It was mine now, a clean slate. Friends came by more, filled the space with laughter, barbecue smoke, the clink of bottles. Life was moving on and I was letting it, but the edge stayed with me, that cold satisfaction I'd honed into a blade. I wasn't the same man she'd left behind. I'd never be him again. One night, I found an old photo of us, tucked in a drawer, forgotten. We were smiling, arms around each other, back when things made sense. I stared at it, waiting for the ache to hit. Didn't. I tore it in half, tossed it in the trash. That was the last of her I'd carry. A year in, I got word Emily had moved out of Sarah's, rented a tiny apartment on the edge of town, a rundown place with peeling paint and a busted mailbox. She was working at a gas station now, pumping fuel, selling cigarettes to truckers who didn't know her story. Someone told me she'd cut her hair short, dyed it dark, like she was trying to disappear into someone else. I didn't go see for myself. Didn't need to. The image was enough. Her standing behind a counter, hands stained with oil, a far cry from the bookstore manager she'd been. Mark surfaced too, briefly. My cop friend called, said he'd been picked up for petty theft a few counties over. Stealing food from a convenience store, too broke to eat. He'd gotten off with a fine he couldn't pay, landed in a work program instead. I pictured him sweeping streets, head down, that cocky edge sanded off. To fit. He'd always thought he was untouchable, gliding through life on charm. Now he was nobody, scraping by. I didn't smile when I heard it, just nodded, filed it away. The divorce finalized around then. She didn't fight it, didn't show up to the hearing. The lawyer said she'd signed everything, let me keep the house, the truck, most of what we'd built. I gave her what the court demanded, bare minimum, and that was it. She was gone, legally, permanently. I celebrated alone, cracked a beer on the porch, watched the sun dip below the trees. It wasn't joy exactly, just relief, like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath too long. People still talked, though the heat had faded. I'd catch snippets at the bar, the gym, the post office, her name, his, mine, tangled in hushed tones. It didn't bother me. Let them talk. They didn't know the half of it, the nights I'd sat up planning, the weight of every move I'd made. They saw the explosion, not the fuse I'd lit. I started dating again, casual stuff, coffee with a woman from work, drinks with someone I met through a friend. Nothing stuck, not yet, but it was a start. The guys teased me, said I was back in the game. I'd laugh, shrug it off. I wasn't looking for another Emily. I wasn't sure I'd ever trust like that again. 2 years out, life settled into something steady. The house was fully mine now, redone top to bottom, no trace of her left. I'd taken up new habits. Running in the mornings, fixing up old furniture in the garage, cooking meals that didn't come from a box. Work was good, business picked up, word of mouth carrying me further than I'd expected. People liked hiring the guy who'd stood his ground, who didn't bend. I didn't lean into the reputation, but I didn't fight it either. I saw Emily once, by chance. I was grabbing gas at a station across town. Not hers, just a random stop. She pulled up in a beat-up sedan, didn't notice me at first. She looked older, thinner, her face etched with lines I didn't remember. She pumped her gas, head down, then glanced up and caught my eye. Time stopped for a second. Just us, two strangers who'd once been everything. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just got in her car and drove off. I finished filling my tank, watched her taillights disappear. That was it. No anger, no regret, just a quiet nothing. Mark's name came up less and less. Last I heard, he'd landed in some nowhere town, working odd jobs, drifting. I didn't care enough to check. He was a footnote, a shadow I chased out of my life. The evidence stayed in a lockbox under my bed, photos, recordings, all of it. I didn't look at it anymore, but I kept it. A reminder, maybe, or a warning. Friends ask sometimes, over beers, how I'd done it, how I'd turned the tables so completely. I'd shrug, say, just paid attention. They'd laugh, think I was joking. I wasn't. It was attention that had unraveled them. Every glance, every lie, every slip I'd caught and used. I'd turned it into a weapon, and they'd never seen it coming. The town moved on, mostly. New scandals replaced ours, fresh gossip for the mill. But my story stuck, a quiet legend that lingered in the corners. I was fine with that. I'd rebuilt, carved out something solid. The past was done, and I was still here. 3 years later, I was a different man. Not better, maybe, but harder, sharper. The softness Emily had known was gone, replaced by edges I didn't try to smooth. I'd sold the house, moved to a smaller place closer to the job sites. A cabin with a porch and a view of the hills. It suited me, simple and mine. Work kept me busy, friends kept me grounded, and the women I dated now didn't ask too many questions about the past. I liked it that way. I heard Emily had left town for good. Packed up one night, no forwarding address. Sarah told someone she'd gone south, chasing a fresh start. I didn't wish her well, didn't wish her ill, just didn't think about her much. She'd been a hurricane in my life, and I'd weathered it, come out the other side. Mark was a rumor now, a name no one bothered with. They'd both faded, ghosts I'd banished with my own hands. The lockbox stayed with me, though I hadn't opened it in years. It sat in a closet, gathering dust, a relic of the war I'd fought and won. Sometimes I'd think about tossing it, burning the photos, smashing the drive, but I never did. It wasn't about holding on to her or him. It was about me, proof of what I was capable of. I'd taken their betrayal, twisted it, made it mine. They'd underestimated me, and it had cost them everything. Life was good now, not perfect, but good. I'd sit on my porch at night, beer in hand, the stars bright overhead, and feel the weight of it all lift. I'd survived. More than that, I'd won. The cruelty of my revenge didn't haunt me. It steadied me. They'd never forget, and neither would I. That was enough.